So, Worlds format just got concluded, and I'm still shocked that even that the meta has been extremely advanced since the last few months, like the decks we have are extremely more powerful than the decks we had like a few months ago. Um, the Redditors, Duel Links meta, and mostly the DLE community are molding so much about the game. To be honest, I don't even think the game is in a perfect slash good situation either. I am actually not really active right now, but it's really shocking that they still complain and cry about the same thing for all this time, for the most part. And what is that, you may ask? It's of course Ice Dragon's Prison, because nobody can stop crying about this card. Like everybody's acting like this card is maxi levels of powerful, and it's really annoying for me. So I just wanted to make this video to decompose IDP strengths, its weaknesses, because it has weaknesses and negatives, guys. Who would think that? And break down what's the situation we have about IDP in the current format. To begin, let's acknowledge some positives, some right things the Redditors say, because I don't want to be extremely negative. IDP is a good card. It's limited 3 for a reason, it's removal, and also interrupts graveyard. Against some decks, this is good. This is very strong. I'm not gonna go out and say IDP is a bad card because you may play one game against the Infernoids in the KC Cup. That's a bullshit take. The second argument that they bring is it wins a lot of games. I agree, it wins games, but many other cards will win you games. That's why you play cards. And I don't think it's IDP wins you more games than other cards do, especially archetype cards and non-archetype cards, and especially skills. Let's not get into that conversation. And the final argument, which is I think the argument that most people present, because people are usually pissed about a card when they don't own it, is that it's a main selection card and that you have to play it. We're gonna break, and yes, it's a main selection card, which puts it behind a paywall, but this doesn't mean that you have to pay $300/euros to play a deck, because you cannot play IDP. And I'm gonna show you how. So all of these are the positives about IDP, the fact that the Redditors say, and that I sort of agree. There is a twist though, but there are negatives. There are risks running the card. Its versatility isn't the best. There are so many matchups that the card is absolutely dead. A very recent example is the new Crusader deck that popped in Worlds. This deck, the only common type is Reclusia and Magius, and you will never, almost never normal summon Reclusia first. I can guarantee you that. Also, if you go second, Equimax just negates it, or Power protects, like, it's dead in that matchup. Another matchup that was relevant in a previous format, because I'm not even considering this format, Infernity, not Infernoid, I confuse these two all the time. And I'm even providing a matchup where you could even use it somehow, like draw phase, take the Decatron and banish one of their small guys. And there are matchups that it's completely dead. It was completely dead. Old style odd dice, current odd dice, Solfacord. But that's the risk. It's strong against monotype cards like Salamangreat, like Speedroids. But there are so many matchups where it's dead, and or even not that good, and people don't take that into account. And in varied formats, it matters. You have not seen people running 3 Ice Dragon's Prison in their decks for that reason, but you have seen them running 3 Crackdown or 3 Compulsory Evacuation Device. Also, let's not act like the decks that have only one type cannot beat it. I'm gonna provide the strict going second examples now. Link Slayer, for example, was a way for decks to beat it. You could like discard a card and pop it And you could even discard 2 and pop it. And for people who are gonna say, oh, I'm just gonna chain Ice Dragon's Prison and banish the Link Slayer, it's like using an offerings on Link Slayer. Okay, Ice Dragon's Prison became an offerings. Good job. Salamangreat Foul is also a way for Salamangreat or Salamangreat Code Talker to force a bad activation, a worse activation of IDP. I understand that there may be more back row, but you can bait more back row with these decks. It's not like they cannot bait back row and the opponent can just use IDP anytime they want. I'm presenting the card as it's completely dogshit, but it's not. It's actually crazy against the deck, but the deck has ways to play around it. Phantom Knights, when they went second, they could use the skill to play around it, and people are gonna be like, oh, they can use their broken skill, no. Well, it's part of the game, accept it. Let's not talk about the searchable cards that exist that could help you. World Legacy Secrets, for example, is a searchable card that helps you, and this has applications even when you go second. It's not like if you go second with Mechanites and you don't have this, you lose twice Dragon's Prison. Also Bubble, I mean, it's more of a hard drawn example, but it still works. There have been multiple games where I have drawn Bubble and I have used it to dodge Ice Dragon's Prison. And then final minor argument is with the delay system with the hourglass in Duel Links. This helps you identify the card because you're gonna expect the card when you are playing against a back row deck or a deck that runs limited 3 staples. It's a minor argument, I don't really take it into account, but it has helped me play around IDP a couple of times. And I think it should also help you. And the major argument is that it's not always good going second. It is good going second in a lot of cases. That's why it's a strong card and it's at the limited 3 slot, but it's not good going second. Oh, you went second against Water Xyz or Synchron. I'm gonna pop it with Crocodragon, and Crocodragon is a fish, so even if you chain the card, it's just a call of the Haunted. Like, who the fuck cares? Cookie, a mono-type deck, ends on Master Ogre, or even if it doesn't open Master Ogre, it ends on most likely on Expected Die, which I know it's random saying that it can pop the card, but it not only can pop the card, it can draw a card that can be a back row hate for it. It's even more consistent to getting the out, even if you don't have the Master Ogre, which will have another monster to most likely in order you can negate another card. Firewall Dragon is also another solution, even in World Chalice decks or in Cyber's decks. If they cannot bait your negate, you can use this to counter Ice Dragon's Prison. Phantom Knights, they search Wings or Sword as part of their combo, mostly Wings, and they can use it to dodge Ice Dragon's Prison. I remember people using Wings in the end phase just so they could have it turn 3 and play around Ice Dragon's Prison. I have done this and it has won me multiple games. The new Odd Dice deck, for example, has the Magician one, the new Odd Dice Orchestra, which can pop Ice Dragon's Prison. It can pop back row in general. I understand that I'm adding variance here, but it is a way to play around. And even if you don't pop it, even if you don't pop Ice Dragon's Prison, this specific deck can summon multiple monsters, which is another good counter. Red Rain is also a way to make your Resonator monster unaffected and protect it from getting banished by Ice Dragon's Prison. And before you say, oh, but Red Rain will have been used, that's not true. There have been many times where Red Rain has remained set on the field and turn 2 has passed. Another honorable mention, which I don't really value but someone told me, is if you open the 2-card speed rate combo, you basically end with no dragons in the graveyard, and IDP just addresses the follow-up, and you still remain with these 2 beat sticks on the field, and you win. I mean, I guess you can get the dice with the Ice Dragon's Prison and banish it afterwards with the yo-yo follow-up, but still, they remain with these 2 guys, and what can you do? The next argument is about the accessibility of the card. Ice Dragon's Prison is a strong card, but do you have to play it in every deck to compete? I am providing you examples of the 2 tier 1 decks before the ban list, because we got a ban list introduced today, so yeah, that was a bit bad for me. No, Speedroid could not play it anyway, but the most popular variant of the deck doesn't even include limited 3 cards. So you don't have to play limited 3 cards. The Odd Dice Orcas deck and the Odd Dice in general, they have the limited 3 cards here, but they weren't competing with limited 3 traps to begin in the first place. So the two best decks of the previous format didn't even play limited 3 staple traps, so you didn't have to own IDP to play them. The other example, which is a very popular deck in tournaments, was the Pure Orcas deck. Pure Orcas deck didn't play Ice Dragon's Prison in this format. Some Pure variants played it in the KC Cup, in the World Championship qualifiers, but now they don't. There have been variants testing it, but Scrap Recycler is the call. So another deck that you could play without having Ice Dragon's Prison. There are many more examples I can bring, but I would rather not include examples that have skill restrictions. So yes, there are decks that don't play limited 3 cards and are good, and you can buy them and play them. But what about the decks that have limited 3 cards? What about these? It turns out that yes, IDP is better in these decks than the other limited 3 cards. Is this the end of the world? No! You can't play Crackdown and Compulsory in decks like Trickstar. You can play Crackdowns in Rockets. Here you see that they don't have Compulsory here because Silver Rocket was also a 3 and people played one Silver Rocket, and if you played a limited 3 card, you would play 2 Ice Dragon's Prison or 1 Ice Dragon's Prison and 1 Crackdown, something like that. The statistics, by the way, include the COG rankings, so the percentages, you can consider them a bit higher for tournaments. Let's be honest here. But still, in even the Trickstar deck, the most popular variant is with Dark Holes and Hand Traps, with White Princess, not with limited 3 traps. You can side the limited 3 traps, yes, or you can even main them in some cases. And I understand that Ice Dragon's Prison is the best limited 3 of the current format, current/previous. But this doesn't mean that you have to play the card. Or you have to own 3 copies of the card. Most lists don't even play 3 Ice Dragon's Prison, they play 1 to 2. And that's what drives me crazy. People are saying that this is behind a paywall and it's like the most broken card and that I have to own it. But you guys, I'm pretty sure that you didn't play the game back then. Because in 2020, when Fiendish Chain got released, you had to play the card. The only decks I think that didn't play it, that were meta, were Blackwings, which were more expensive than going into that the selection box, I'm not gonna lie. Invoked Neos, which played Karma Card, which was also behind the paywall, even though a smaller one, and some people still played Fiendish in that deck. And Witchcrafter. You can argue for Witchcrafter is the only deck. Even Shiranui, if you want to play Shiranui, which was very popular, you played it. Element Sabers, you played it. I guess Crystons, you didn't play it, but Crystons were extremely expensive anyway, so it counters the argument. Like, people even played this in Dark Lords. The alternative was Void Trap Hole. That was the alternative. These were times where we had serious paywall issues. And even more ones, Book of Moon. Book of Moon is extremely playable even today. In 2021, post the Noble Knight Desperado format, if you didn't have at least two Book of Moons, you could only play Thunder Dragons. I'm not lying. And you sided Book of Moon. You had to side Book of Moon inside the formats for Roach. And some people even main decked copies in Team Wars. So this is actual paywall. If you didn't have Book of Moon, your deck was significantly worse. I remember watching Misaka beating big decks because he top decked Book of Moons in 2 games in a row. Which was crazy because they had like figured Onomat was the best deck way before, but Misaka just went like, oh, Book plus Channeler and Swallows, you die. It was crazy. So to sum it up, IDP is a good card. It's a very good card. It's worthy of being limited 3. It's the best limited 3 right now. It wasn't the best limited 3 in the April format. It was the best limited 3 in the February KC Cup, even though it had many dead matchups. And it's for sure the best limited 3 card now. But there is counterplay to the card. It's a strong effect, but you're acting as if there is no risk running the card. There is. And the most important argument which matters, you don't have to own the card at 2 or 3 copies to play the game. You can use the other limited 3 cards. They are very strong cards. Crackdown is an amazing card. You just need to use your fucking brain when you use it. And compulsory is Ooga Booga, but it's a bit weaker of an effect. I understand that IDP it has the strongest effect against some decks and can be Ooga Booga, but you don't have to act as if the other limited 3 cards are an extreme downgrade. They are noteworthy replacements, and not even all decks run limited 3 cards in the first place. Overall, that was my opinion on the card. I sound like I'm molding, but I am not. Please write your comment down below. What's your opinion about Ice Dragon's Prison, and consider subscribing. That's all for today. Have a nice day, everybody.